Okay, Chief. Now I want to share with you a model. And this model is based on a Japanese way of life model called Ikigai. But I've just transformed it a little bit to do with your career. So here it is. And this particular model brings together 4 elements. First of all, what are you really good at? What is the one thing in this world that you're probably better than most at? You know, I see a lot of people in their career, they've got this real passion for a kind of work, but you know what? They're just not very good at. And have you ever heard someone like who's just an awesome guitarist, right? But they've got no passion for it. It doesn't come through in the chords, you know, they're just playing for the sake of it. But then I've seen the opposite, where someone who's just super passionate about guitaring or singing or the trombone, and you know what? They're terrible. They got no skill. So this is the thing. We have to align the thing that you love doing with what you're actually really good at. And that's the first part of the pie here. If you look at this model, there are 4 elements, right? There's what you're good at, what you love doing, what your ideal customer needs, and what you can be paid for. Okay, and when these 4 all come together, you get a remarkable result. Okay, and that result, by the way, is what I call your mission. Okay, Chief, let's talk through these 4 elements in a little bit of detail so you can understand how they fit together and what happens when each of them is missing. So here's the model once again. As you can see, your mission is at the intersection of what you're very good at, what you love doing, what your ideal customer needs, and what you can be paid for. And when you get all those together, you become high demand and a magnetic force for opportunities. You get the peak of market rates and a deep sense of satisfaction every single day. But if we go over to what you are very good at and we start with that, this is your underlying skills, often what you're naturally drawn to, what you're really good at compared to most people. You might be fantastic at problem solving, at analysis, at coding, at marketing, at strategy, at visions, at culture development, at transformation, at negotiations. You are good at things, and in this box here, what we put is what you're better at than most people. If you went back to that competitor analysis stage and we spoke about the qualifications and the experience and the skills you've got, this is where we find those things out, where you stand out against the competition. That's what these elements are. Because what happens is, if you're very, very good at something, it makes it easier to get a result for your client, right? And that is your boss, remember? And then your dream role is the boss you're going to have in your dream role. Now, if that's a CEO role, remember that would be a board. But if it's a CFO role, it would be a CEO. If you're further down the organization, maybe it's a general manager, might be your boss, right? So at this point, it's really important to also look at what happens if you're trying to do something that you're not very good at. Okay, and if your dream role really requires that skill, then you need to upskill enormously to become one of the best at it. And you want to be in the top sort of 3 to 5% of people in the industry at this particular task. If you can be the absolute best, even better. So that's what you are very good at. Now let's link it around to what you love doing. Now these are all the things that you just love spending your time on. It doesn't mean you have to be any good at it. I mean, I've heard thousands of people play musical instruments. They absolutely loved it, but gosh, they were terrible. And I compare that to the guitarist who's just really playing because they have to. Like, you can sense it or you can hear it in the chords. They don't love what they're doing. All right? So at this point, about what you love doing, these are the kind of things that you're really happy to spend your time doing. Maybe you love trawling through spreadsheets. Maybe you love public speaking. Maybe you love the process of analyzing market conditions or strategy development. And this is your thing. And when you've got the love of it and it aligns to the skill, the top and the left, when those 2 things are working together, life gets great. It's really cool. Right? But when we don't link it to the other 2, you don't necessarily have something that's in demand or what people are willing to pay a premium for. So think of all the things you love to do. And here's a little hint. Remember in the earlier episodes or in the earlier module, we spoke about how to increase purpose. And there's a number of things you can do from an altruistic or for the greater good and also for yourself. So sometimes This is about a mindset shift for doing things on purpose so you enjoy them more. Because very often you'll find if you just bring a new mindset to an activity, you can love it even more, or you can turn it on its head. And I remember speaking to a guy called Nathan Sharp, and he was a Wallaby captain, which is the Australian rugby team, and he led the country. I think he played nearly 100 tests. This guy was an absolute superstar, and he said to me once, you know what, elite sport is about 2% on the field in front of the TV cameras and 98% behind the scenes doing the hard work. And great people learn to love the grind. They actually learn to love it and enjoy it. So if you don't like or love all the things in the background, it's going to make those big moments really, really difficult because you're just not going to be prepared. You're not going to do the hard work because you don't love it. But he was able to reframe it in a way that he then learned to love it. Okay? And that's something that you might be able to do at this point, is think of some of the things that you love doing. Right? And then think of some of the things you don't love doing. And those things you don't love doing, what can you change to make yourself love them? Okay, let's talk about what your ideal customer needs. Now, we're talking about here the person who's going to employ you to do your dream job. They are your ideal customer. And earlier on, here's the hint, you've already done all the hard work on this. You did a customer profile. And you went into all the detail of all the problems, the issues, the challenges, their fears, their goals, their dreams. You know what they need better than anyone. So at this point, what we're trying to do is align what you're good at, what you love doing, with the one thing your customer needs more than anything. And you can see now, all of a sudden, the final piece of the pie, which is what they're willing to pay a premium for, what you can be paid for, well, now we've hit a sweet spot. And that sweet spot is what we call your mission. And when we start telling the story about it, that is what we call your unique value proposition. Your UVP is the story of your mission. But before we fly on, let's just look at what your ideal customer needs are and what happens when you don't get it right. So let's think for a second. You went back and you did a full customer profile and you did the fears and you did all the goals and the dreams and you spoke about their issues and what their boss is giving them grief about. What happens if you're trying to do something that they don't want? End up being no demand for your services. Now, you might be absolutely awesome at something. You might be the best in the world at it and you might absolutely love doing it. But if your ideal customer doesn't want that, they're never going to buy. Right? They're never going to even talk to you. Right? So once you have worked out what is something through that market analysis, through that customer profile that they're willing to look at, they really, really want, then we just add the final piece of the pie. Are they willing to pay for it, and are they willing to pay a premium for you? Because there are some things out there they're just unwilling to pay for. They don't see the value in it. They want it, but they're unwilling to pay for it. So we need to make sure they're willing to pay for it and to pay a premium for your service, because that is an indicator of the depth of value. And here's a little tip around what they're going to pay you for. People buy an emotion and justify it with logic. So if you can find something that is a personal pain point of theirs that is directly aligned, because that's very emotive, a personal pain point is very emotive, and then you can align that to a problem of the company. So as an example of that, you might find that they have having trouble with a whole range of people in their business, in their team, underperforming. And you know that's a pain point. But you also know the company is trying to drive a high-performance culture. So that's something that you go, well, there's the grief, but the company's trying to drive this, so there's a mandate in the organization. And then if you can sell a high-performance teams program or building high performance to them, because maybe you're in HR and you deal with culture and leadership development, guess what? When you go into that discussion about what they want, what they're willing to pay for, you can say, you know what? What I do is what I love doing is I love helping organizations build really powerful leaders and high performance team culture. And I've done it again and again and again, and here's my track record. And I know that it will improve the bottom line like this. Because I know if we improve engagement, we're going to reduce turnover and we're going to do all this sort of stuff to make this valuable. And all of a sudden, they're on board because you've aligned a personal problem of theirs with a problem the organization also has. So that's a little tip to really drive up your value. Righto, Chief, I want to draw your attention to the 4 boxes in the outer corners, or the top left, top right, bottom left, bottom right, where we talk about demand, income, results, legacy, and feeling. Let's start with the top left. And in the top left, what we're talking about here is a little sector that's just to the left of mission. And in this sector, you are doing what you love doing. You are very good at it, and it is what you can be paid for, but it isn't what your ideal customer needs. Now, because your ideal customer doesn't need it, what it means, therefore, is the demand is low. The income is market rate. The results are good, but they're not useful. The legacy is that there isn't one because they're not going to buy, and guess what? The feeling is frustration. In the top right-hand corner, what we're talking about here is a little sector that's above mission. And in this point, it's what you are good at. It is what you love doing. It is what your ideal customer needs, but it isn't what they're willing to pay for. So the demand is high, right? Because the customer needs it, but the income is low because they're not going to pay for it. It's a great legacy, but it's at a financial cost. The feeling is deep satisfaction, but really what comes with that is, or probably anxiety because you're not earning enough money. If we then shift down to the bottom left, where we're talking about the sector that is directly below the word mission. So what we've got here is you are very good at what you do. You are now getting paid for it. It is what your ideal customer needs, but it isn't what you love doing. So the demand is high because the customer wants it. It's what they pay for. The income is great, but the results are limited by your energy, and the feeling and the legacy is a grind because you just don't love it. In the bottom right-hand corner, we're talking about the sector just to the right of mission. In here, you love what you're doing. Your ideal customer needs it, and you can be paid for it. They're willing to pay a premium for it, but you're not very good at it. So it's stiff competition because you don't stand out. Right? It's difficult to get results. Mistakes get made, and the feeling is uncertainty. So whenever you remove one of these 4 elements, it actually can cost you the whole game. This is why it's so important to search, to hunt, to spend time really thinking about how you can harness that point right in the middle. Because when you get in the middle, this is where you get high demand, above market rate, amazing results, a legacy you can be proud of, and a feeling of flow. And isn't that just something we really, really would all love to have in our lives? So that's just a bit more on the Ikigai that's at the center of my mission.